Yeah, you are reading this title right. Yes, Hiroki Totoki and Satya Nadella are destroying both staples in console gaming today. I mean, Totoki is single-handedly destroying PlayStation. This is on the heels of Satya destroying Xbox. And I know you guys are probably looking at this and you're like, hold on, what is the big deal here? These CEOs are bringing the parent companies to new highs. Satya Nadella has brought Microsoft to record-breaking highs financially and on the market, you know what I mean, that they've never seen before, even with Bill Gates and so forth, with their investments in LinkedIn and now their investments in AI and so forth. And now you got Hiroki Totoki, the newfound CEO of Sony, who, while Sony was in a little bit of rut because of their margins, they seem to still be moving in the right direction. He's doing things to get Sony's margins up. He's doing a lot of multi-billion-dollar deals. We've just heard about a deal with Bandai Namco that is supposed to be very profitable, that people are talking about positively in the market. So he's driving them in a financially prosperous direction, it appears. So what is the beef about? I mean, this is just business, right? Well, that's all fine and dandy if you got stock in these companies, right? But if you're a gamer, there's a serious problem with cultureless CEOs running gaming. And it was just shown in the latest job description that Sony has posted, and it's got the world of buzz. I mean, it's got Xbox fanboys making fun of the PlayStation fanboys and some PlayStation fanboys, some who I love, but honestly, I got to put on mute when it comes to this conversation because ain't no time for wood buffing and waxing from behind, right? And purposefully letting yourself get teabagged. Ain't no time for it now. This is a 5-alarm blaze. All responses, SOS, whatever you want to call it, we need to take care of this and take this seriously. So let's talk what happened, why this is really bad, and your boy got a solution. But it's an uncomfortable one. Let's get right into it, folks. What's up, everybody? It is your boy MM2K of Hard Knock Digital Culture, Cloud Dosage, and here MM2K Gaming back again with another episode of The Dose on YouTube. This is where we talk about the latest and greatest in the video game space. And man, oh man, oh man, I really do hate making these videos, but they got to be done. Before we get into all that, though, do us a huge favor: hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and rock those bells for notifications, please. And do us a huge favor. A lot of you don't even see these videos when they come out. You're probably seeing this later and like, oh man, I missed this video, and you're missing our lives. YouTube is doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes or whatever. I'm not going to dog them out this time. I got enough on my plate to dog out between Totoki and Nadella. I'll just say this, because of all the construction that they're doing in the background, it may flip off your notifications. So what you're going to want to do is go to your bell, flick it off, and then flick it back onto all. That way you get notified when we're dropping content. I don't bombard you or spam you with stuff. So when you hit all, that's how you're going to get everything. And trust me, you'll be happy for it. All right. Let's get into what's going on today. And in order for me to do that, I got to do this. Let's make sure that I'm doing this right. Okay, here we go. All right. So here goes the news. Shout out to Charlie Intel. They say new PlayStation job listing states they are looking for someone to assist in bringing PlayStation Studios software titles across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Steam, Epic Games Store, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. And here goes the big excerpt from said posting. It says, reporting to the Vice President, Commercial Management, as Senior Director of Multi-Platform and Account Management, you will play a critical leadership role, in shaping and executing the global commercial strategy for PlayStation Studio software, titled across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Steam, Epic Games Store, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. This role is accountable for optimizing the profitability, ensuring cross-functional alignment, and leading a high-performing team focused on multi-platform expansion, mid-range commercial planning, and platform partner management. Okay. So there we go. There you have it. So yeah, going multi-platform. Now I know there's a lot of you that are sitting there saying, hold on, MM, this could mean this or this could mean that, or what's so bad about that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, if this is a legitimate job posting, which would make, if it's not a legitimate job posting, which it would make a lot of what I'm about to say null and void, even though I still don't trust Sony. I think a lot of people are believing this. I'm not sure how well validated this is, but I believe it. I believe this is something they want to approach, even if this is not a real job posting, just off of the lies we've been told, the backtracks that have happened, and the fact that Hiroki Totoki, which is the worst thing that happened to Sony, is now in charge. And we'll get into all that. So we're going, for the rest of this video, we're going to assume and surmise that this is a legitimate job posting, even though I haven't gotten a chance to validate the sourcing. All right. So I want you guys to look at some other things that have been said here about all this here. In order to do that, let's go back to the web. So let's look at this. I want you to take a look at some things that I've had to say about this upon me reading this morning. I said, compromising your exclusives like this instead of using them to draw gamers to your entire marketplace, toe tags revenue and eventually innovation. Only leadership untethered to the culture would lack this awareness. Welcome to the fateful sagas of Satya and Totoki. But I got more to say. This person, King Dave from Los Blancos, says PlayStation is going to learn very hard that your platform is and should be the only priority. And I got fire and shout out to PlayStation there. I love that tweet. It's a great tweet by King's Dave from Los Blancos. Guabzilla also said, okay, so this is in response to the homie Detective C's. Detective C says, I'm going to break down the PlayStation position opening before you jump in the comments. I have said, I do not care about exclusivity, as I can play where I want to play. First responsibility to oversee. So he's breaking down certain things in this tweet, right? As far as the strategy and what it could mean and whether it's bad for the PlayStation brand or not. And Guabzilla just said, hey, look, man, we just gonna cut to the chase here. He said, well, they gonna hire some people to make PlayStation 5 games since their multi-plat portfolio is worth $700 million a year and their PlayStation 5 portfolio is worth $30 billion. It seems tone deaf and mathematically doesn't make a lick of sense. And I agree with him. And I say, facts, bro. I said, we've seen a decline in output and announced projects, but billions and more focused on an anime, TV, and other miscellaneous entertainment partnerships. Sony under Totoki is treating PlayStation like some branch off a Paramount Plus like approach when they the damn trunk, right? So I'll show you guys that tweet later. But yeah, so that's where I'm at with this, right? I don't like this at all. I think it's bad for gaming. And the problem is the non-cultured gaming CEOs. Again, I get what Satya's done for Microsoft, but what he's done for gaming, he has gutted gaming. He doesn't see the value in investing in your storefront through exclusives, investing in your hardware, and doing those in tandem so one doesn't cannibalize the other. Like, let's take, for instance, the Xbox Series X. The Xbox Series X, in theory, was not a horrible machine. Not the most innovative Xbox, but it packed a lot of punch. And, you know, people love this quick resume thing. You know what I'm saying? I think quick resume is more of a byproduct that is loved if you're a Game Pass gamer and you flip through titles. I mean, that's great, but most gamers, you know, they may be playing 2 or 3 games at a time. And, you know, something like quick resume isn't such adored as what PlayStation's already offered. Now, if it was available on PlayStation, I don't think people would complain, but, you know, tagging that as the innovation of the generation, I just don't know about that. And from what I understand, because I'm not the biggest PlayStation aficionado historically, PlayStation used to have these things called cards, right? That kind of work like that, I guess, I assume. So again, and cards went away, and I only heard it on a podcast. Shout out to Porter Rock. Porter Rock mentioned on his latest podcast close to this recording. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. So again, not the most innovative machine, but it packed a pretty punch. What happened was this push for Game Pass and subscription models it cannibalized the power of the Series X. How? Because they focused so much on Game Pass and just accessibility to get you access to Game Pass that the Series S was created. Because the Series S was created, that completely bottlenecked the Series X, because now you have to run everything through the Series S and scale it up to the Series X capability. So the Series X, which on paper is significantly more powerful than the PlayStation 5 base, split hairs with it or underperformed in a lot of the current generation games. You know what I'm saying? And that effectively destroyed Xbox as we know it. So they're trying to rebrand it as some glorified third-party publisher that's just trying to get you access to their games however they can. They went from the solid, steadfast, super hardcore, super innovative platform that they were with the OG and the 360 to now a glorified Ubisoft. That's basically who they are. And they went and bought up all these IPs, and now they're gutting them. Even Call of Duty, even their successful IPs, they are gutting them. They are destroying the art within, right? ZeniMax had that, what was that MMO that everybody was praising, gone. Just like that. In an era where, because game development is becoming more and more timely to make AAA games, you got something good that's out there, an MMO, right? Suck up a lot of time, take a lot of people's attention, and do a lot of good in the gaming community, right? And now it's gone. Just like that. Because you want to spend $8 billion on AI, and then you want to, invest in human waste in order to support your AI endeavors. I know it sounds crazy, but look it up. It's actually real. Human waste being tied to Microsoft AI efforts. Look it up. I bullcrap you not, right? So that's what you have. What Satya has done to gaming. And a formidable foe in Xbox has been reduced to a glorified Ubisoft, right? And now you're seeing the head of Sony, which, again, at the very beginning, I tried to tell you guys, this was a horrible mistake, because you don't make the CFO in charge of something that requires artistic overview. I get that Sony's in a crunch and they got to raise their margins. And there might have been a little bit of pain temporarily, but now this guy is in charge and he completely wants to eradicate what made PlayStation successful and turn it into Microsoft gaming, essentially. They're just going to go at it at a slower pace. Where instead of, because you hear all this stuff about, well, gaming is going here anyway. The approach that Sony had prior, okay, there is a possibility that more and more gamers can systemically subscribe to a subscription service. We'll create one. There is a possibility that more and more subscribers will, more and more gamers will subscribe to cloud gaming. We'll create one. We're going to create all these things on the periphery where there's possibilities, so we can flip the switch and move to it if it becomes something mainstream, but we're not putting all of our eggs in that basket. We're going to work with what is continued to work, and we're going to grow and expand that. And they had something great in that area with the China Joy project, where everybody was saying gaming is stagnant and there's nowhere else to grow gaming. The China Joy project spit in the face to that and said, hold my beer. And that would have been a great way for expansion. But again, you put the CFO guy in charge, CFOs are the money people. That's all they see. Money, money, money. They do not respect art. A horrible decision by Sony to make this their long-term CEO. And look what he's doing. He's doing this. Now, what is this? What is this? Why is this a problem? Well, let me break down why this is a problem and why. By breaking down who is the enemy. We got to know who the enemies are. And the enemies are the non-cultured CEOs. I break this down in one of my tweets after discovering this this job posting. I said, CEOs controlling the gaming space without awareness to the culture will be the downfall of the innovative platform. i.e., Google had an innovative idea. You guys know I felt that way because I covered it. We created a whole channel, Stadia Dosage, which is now Cloud Dosage, based off of that. But the CEO and the board around them wouldn't embrace what was needed to connect with the mainstream. This is worse though. What's going on with Microsoft and PlayStation is worse though, because you now have established entities that are going down. Like, it was shameful for people like me to see how they pulled the plug on Stadia and how they wasted the resources and the time of great people in the community like Jack Buser and all the great people that worked at Stadia, and even Phil Harrison, who had the idea in his brain way back when Fortnite, when the seeds were being dropped in Fortnite. He said, hey, we need to invest in this. Not only do we need to invest in this as in Google, but this would be a good springboard for our Stadia platform. And his colleagues laughed at him because they don't get the culture. They brought in these people like Aaron Hoffman John and all of them, Jack Buser, Phil Harrison, all these other people they brought in that had gaming experience. They were surrounded by people that were not embedded in the culture. And that's why, as great as the product was, the how can I say, the carry along and the marketing of the Stadia product was abysmal because the leadership didn't understand how to connect to the mainstream because they did not have that culture, right? So that's one thing. It's even worse now because guess what? Google wasn't established in the community, so it was less of a burn. It was a burn for people like me who love Stadia, but it was less of a burn systemically to the mainstream gamer. These were pillars of mainstream gaming. I mean, even Microsoft and all its failures, it still is in tens of millions of homes. 30 million Game Pass subscribers. This is a failure to a staple in gaming, regardless of how well the parent companies are doing. Now, Microsoft, I think Microsoft, they can abolish this, get rid of the gaming division or do whatever they want to do with it, and they'll be fine. Sony, not so much. Like I said in my tweet with responding to Guap, I said Sony under Totoki is treating PlayStation like some branch off of a Paramount Plus like approach when they the damn trunk. Totoki can't afford to go down this lane. You're going to destroy Sony, not just PlayStation, but Sony. Now, and the bad thing about it for us is, we can say all this now, the remnants of that is not going to happen for years. It didn't even happen for years for Microsoft, because this is going to be a slow drip. So you're going to see a few years where Sony stock will improve and they'll make money, but you know, we're not going to see the after effects of this until the PlayStation 6, when people are just like, well, instead of me investing in a new PlayStation, why don't I just get a PC? Because here's what's going to happen. They're going to start bleeding revenue. And when they start bleeding revenue, they're going to have to double down on this. The same thing that happened with Microsoft. When they start realize, hold on, we're putting our games in more places. Why isn't this working? Why are we making less money? Maybe we got to do more. Maybe we got to, okay. And then they're going to start, we got to whip out more games. We got to start putting out more games, like how Microsoft thought the answer to their woes was buying up more studios so they can have access to more games. Let's put out more games. Let's just create more games. And as they put out more games and put them in more places, the money is still shrinking. They're not going to understand why. And then, you know, the next thing you know, the PlayStation that we beloved will be no longer. How is this possible? How is this possible? Because I know a lot of you are looking at this and you're like, you're tripping. We got some issues with what you're saying. And I got you covered. Now, there's a lot of things that are being said in rebut to people like me that have these concerns. 99.9% of them are coming from people that are also not cultured in gaming. They're tourists or whatever. They just started getting into this a couple years ago. They might start playing a whole bunch of games on level 1 out of 20. You know, they put everything in easy mode, and now they think that, you know what I'm saying, they're aficionados here. They there's a group like that out there, and they're playing catch up now, and they don't have the lineage from decades ago, like people like ourselves that are worried about this, that understand what works in gaming and what keeps the culture thriving and innovative. They don't care about that. They think just because they've been going pew 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 a lot for the last several months or whatever it is, that now they're aficionados in gaming, or they're vocal on Twitter and they're suck it pony and all other stuff. Now they think they're so 99% of that noise I'm ignoring. I'm talking to the real true gamers that understand and respect the lineage, regardless of when you got into gaming. You understand it, you respect it, right? And you realize this isn't it. For those of you that understand and respect the lineage and maybe don't understand why this isn't it, I got you because you got some questions. All right. So first and foremost, a lot of you out there are saying, well, hold on, this is just live service. This is not everything. They've already explained this. They broke this down. I've seen this a lot online from people that mean well. Let's do a thing here. All right. And let's pretend that pretend this isn't PlayStation, because I see a lot of PlayStation fandom saying this. Pretend this isn't PlayStation. Act like this is Xbox for a second. Okay. So let me show you something. Let's go back to the post. Let's read what the post says. It says, and I'm going to go to this part. This role is accountable for optimizing title profitability, ensuring cross-functional alignment, and leading high-performance team focus on multi-platform expansion. Multi-platform expansion. Okay. Oh no, but Mars. Okay, it says that, but maybe they didn't write that out well. They didn't write that out well. PlayStation said, again, act like this isn't PlayStation. Act like this is Xbox. Now, here's shout out to the homie Gaming Grindhouse. Shout out to Jazz Gaming Grindhouse, friend of the channel. We love his channel. Here's what he pulled out this post from Herman Hulse from 2020. Let's see what Herman Hulse had to say back in 2020 about those of us that had these concerns that a lot of y'all back then said we're just going overboard on. He said, this is on the PlayStation blog. PlayStation is no stranger to publishing titles on PC, but Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the largest games to make the leap. Is there anything you would say to PlayStation fans? What does it mean for the future? This is what Herman Hulse had to say. Quote, sure, I think it's important that we stay open to new ideas of how to introduce more people to PlayStation and show people maybe what they've been missing out on, and maybe put a few minds at ease. And to maybe put a few minds at ease, releasing one first-party AAA to PC doesn't necessarily mean that every game now will come to PC. In my mind, Horizon Zero Dawn was just a great fit in this particular instance. We don't have plans for day-and-date PC releases, and we remain 100% committed to dedicated hardware. So, are they fully day-and-date with PC releases? Not yet, but just in 2020, he told you. We don't have any plans for it. This was just a particular instance. You blink your eye, now there are day-and-date PC releases. Now again, it's just live service. right? But then you got PlayStation IP launching day and date elsewhere. Now their games are coming to Xbox. It's just, like I said, it's a slow drip. Who does this sound like, though? This sounds like, it's just 4 games. There's no guarantees. Right. If you believe PlayStation, I got a piece of land to sell you. It's called Bibblewatt Island. Just trust me. I'll send you my Cash App. It's MM2K Gaming scamming. Yeah, MM2K Gaming scams. I'll send you the Cash App. You know, in case you forget that. Just send me the money first. I'll show you where the island is. Anyway, next question from people that are well-intended, that respect the culture, but maybe it's not clicking yet. Don't the more platforms, they ask, don't the more platforms you develop for mean more money? And the answer to that is no, not for PlayStation. Here's why. Number one, you got to take into consideration the revenue you'll make versus the cost of the port. We can arguably say that there are plenty of PlayStation games that have been put out there that on PC, for instance, that sold horribly and probably weren't worth the port. Now, PlayStation's talking about, oh, we sold 2.5, we've gotten 2.5 million or 25 million to date from our PC sales. Most of that is Helldivers too. Maybe the 1 or 2 successful ones, but that's a spit in a bucket for PlayStation. I want to see the margin revenue for that. Now, again, when you go multi-plat, now again, people will say, well, if it doesn't work, why do they keep pursuing it? Because Hiroki Totoki is a money guy. He's looking at these original games that were put out there, and he's thinking, look, he's steadfast and stubborn on this. Look, more places mean more money. We must have done something wrong. We can do something else to make these work. And he's going to F around and find out. But he's going to go through that heartache first. Why do you make less money? Well, number one, again, we just talked about the sales versus the the profit margins and the cost of the port. But more importantly, you cannibalize your marketplace sales, which yield higher margins. What am I talking about? The more and more, and shout out to our homie Devil Shooter, big time follower of the channel. Shout out to you, Devil Shooter. You're exemplary in this example, and you've been trying to tell me for years that more and more people are going to do this, and I got to give him his flowers because he's been doing it for a while. After some time, people, when you start putting more and more of your titles on PC, for instance, or elsewhere, and you start shrinking the window that those games come over, after some time, people say, I might as well wait. Because you know what happens? A lot of people don't buy day and date. A lot of people wait for sales. And, if we're talking about you're coming to PC within a year, that's how long a lot of people wait. So if you're going to bring your games to PC and I got to wait, which I would probably normally do anyway, might as well, instead of buying the next PlayStation, instead of buying your controllers and your hardware, I might as well invest in a PC and upgrade my PC, right? Because even though the PC may be more expensive, I'm going to save on every single game. $70 games you can find for $50, $40, hell, sometimes $30, Green Man Gaming, whatever. Find you a decent code, right? It's very frequent especially if the game is coming to Steam, which if you're a PC game, unless you sign some stupid deal with Epic, you gotta come to Steam or you won't survive. And as we know, every game on Steam damn well has a discount at some point in time, particularly before launch. So you're right that you're off the bat making the money up over time, particularly if you buy a lot of games. You're making the money up that you had to spend on building the PC. Right? Plus two, if you're gonna bring your game to PC, I might as well play it where it plays better. Now, some people would argue, well, Maz, the PC ports are bad on these games. They are right now because PlayStation doesn't have the infrastructure set up to make them well on PC. Hiroki Totoki with this job description is all in on making the games perform the same everywhere. That job description just tells you how dedicated he is to that. So whatever you're going to get, now I'm not saying that the PC ports are going to be godly. I'm saying that however it plays on PlayStation, it's going to play the same way on Xbox and wherever else. And PC is going to be slightly better because PC will be slightly better based upon the type of PC that you build. And if you build a strong enough PC will end up becoming the best place to play your PlayStation games, just like it is for Xbox. Period. So if that is the case, guess what I'm going to do? I no longer see the value in buying a PlayStation. I will go to PC. Guess what happens when I go to PC? I take my money over there, and now you got to split 30% with Steam, and you're getting 0% of my multiplat sales. So while you may sell a little bit more or significantly more on with your games on PC or wherever else, you're losing significantly more money because a lot more transactions that I make, which are multi-platform transactions, a lot more of those are now being cannibalized because I've taken those elsewhere. This is why Microsoft, out of PlayStation, Nintendo, Microsoft, since they've started this day and date PC strategy, this is why Microsoft has seen the slowest margin growth out of the three since 2016. They've seen it until, and I don't even know if you want to call it margin growth or revenue growth. They haven't seen a bump, which was a superficial bump, since they bought. They haven't seen a bump until they bought Activision Blizzard, but that wasn't a bump because their games were selling better. They bought Activision Blizzard and sucked in that revenue, and it didn't necessarily increase margins. I don't believe. What increased margins? Them putting their games on PlayStation. Why? Because the PlayStation marketplace currently is killer. It outperforms everything. Why is the PlayStation marketplace killer? Because it has all the games that you want to play that are everywhere else, and they have a subset of games that are awesome, that are generally rated high, that are not everywhere else. You eliminate that factor, the PlayStation marketplace is just like any other marketplace, and it's going to lose its luster. But again, when you have a non-cultured CEO in charge, they don't realize that. They're just stubborn on more places equals more money. Because that's CFO math. That's the problem of putting the CFO in charge of an artistic marketplace. They don't get the art of it. And they don't get the expectations behind the art. So that's why just putting more on more places doesn't equate to more money. And here goes one of my favorite questions. Well, aren't making games for singular sell purpose mean more quality? What do I mean by that? A lot of people are sitting there asking and saying, well, hold on. You talk like these games that are on PlayStation are excellent right now because they're being used to sell the console, right? And you mentioned that PlayStation has a 60% failure rate when it comes to the exclusives that they have. And this is the failure rate that they've set for themselves. You know what I'm saying? This is the failure rate that they set for themselves and said they're okay with only 40% of their games, you know, being in the black. So a lot of you are asking, well, Moss, if a game has to sell on its own merits instead of leaning on being funded or being justified by that 40% that does operate, doesn't it mean that the game is going to be better? And the answer to that is no. Here's why. Two key reasons why. Number one, when you're making games for a singular sales purpose, often developers want to play it safe. They start implementing things that they've seen in other games that are successful. Now, sometimes they make the right decisions and put together some of the right things and the games do well, right? But when you have to sell a $500 box so our company can make money off of multiplats, because that's what an exclusive's purpose originally is. Hey, bring these people to our store instead of that store so they can buy the stuff that's everywhere else. You know what I mean? Bring these people to our store so they can buy the stuff that's everywhere else. It's like a gas station. Gas stations don't make money off the gas. That's why they compete and battle over the prices where they can. They want to drive you to their store with their gas so you can buy the chips and pop and stuff like that and the cakes that you could buy at any gas station. That's where they make their money, but they're luring you in with the price of their gas. And the smart ones know how much of a hit to take on the gas to lure you there so you can go to the convenience store part of the gas station. Okay? So, because of that, Sony has purposely enacted a similar approach when it comes to it. So therefore, they know their games can't just be good enough to sell well individually. They got to be good enough to bring you to their platform so you can buy their $500 box. Because if you buy their $500 box, that increases your access to their store, where when you go buy the chips and the soda pop and the stuff from them, they can make the real money. It's the same theory, and it's just the same theory that's been working for successful game platforms for decades, right? But again, when you just build for singular sales, and the proof is in the pudding and the slop that we see from these multi-platform people. Like, let me give you an example. Ubisoft. Now, Ubisoft, quote unquote, has not hit its financial margins, but there's a good case and a good argument set out by documents, and this flies above a lot of you guys' heads because unfortunately you don't understand business and finances all like that, hence why a lot of you will justify this stuff. But there was a great argument set out there by, I think, A&J Investments, that Ubisoft and Tencent were bamboozling investors because they were purposefully not hitting publicized margins so the stock price could get low, so they could sell it to, so Ubisoft could sell it to Tencent at a low price. And we kind of had some of that happen. Now there's this new subsidiary for Ubisoft, and all that's happened, right? And because all this flies over you guys' heads. But let's look at Ubisoft. Ubisoft still makes a ton of money for just giving you a lot of the same cookie cutter multi-platform, I mean not multi-platform, games as a service experiences for the most part. And I'm a fan of a lot of their open world stuff, but I'll be the first to tell you it ain't the most innovative. It's just that, you know, for gamers like me, playing in these open world and having these open world experiences is, you know, it's comforting and rewarding as a gamer if you like that type of stuff. It's not super innovative, but when I look at a game like The Last of Us or even Marvel Spider-Man 2, their approach to open world may not be as big and cookie cutter as Ubisoft, but it's a lot more innovative. Spider-Man 2 is like one of the greatest video games of the last 3 generations. I mean, that game is just amazing. Right? You come up with games like Spider-Man and Last of Us when you are willing to accept that 60% failure rate, because you're like, look, if we keep trying to be innovative and we hire people based off their ability to eye talent, and we just keep looking for talent, and we're not worried about individual sales, we keep just trying innovative stuff and talented stuff, when we hit, we are going to hit huge. See, these multi-plat companies, they're not taking these risks. That's why a lot of this stuff is just regurgitated. That's why a lot of them now they're trying to ride the Souls wave. They ride these waves and you just get cookie cutter regurgitated stuff over and over again. Where PlayStation is innovating, because their goal, when you think about it, their goal is way more challenging than just selling a bunch of copies. Their goal is, I got to bring you to this $500 box. That's a lot more daunting than just saying, hey, I particularly have to sell well. And because they have that challenge, they've created a formula of the failure rate that they can accept, their ability to eye talent, and what they expect the hit ratios to be. And it's worked for them. When you turn to a profit per game model, that eradicates that altogether, because you're willing to take less risks. And we've heard it from Hiroki Totoki. He's saying that he saw a lot of fat in the game. You know, he's trimming the fat off of the development of games. That means they're taking less risks. That means that the games are going to have lesser and lesser quality. And we may not see it now, but in years come, we will see it in the PlayStation that we know will be no more. So that's my take on this, folks. This is why I say this is awful for gaming. And the proof is in the pudding when you look at, you know, the PlayStation games and even the Nintendo games. When you have that, I need this exclusive to be so good that it pulls you to our $500 or $400 or $300 box. The proof is in the pudding. Those games are the games consistently. The PlayStation and Nintendo games consistently place in the Game of the Year discussions. Consistently. The proof is in the pudding. So what can we do about this? This is a horrible situation, and I doubt that Totoki is going to change course. Very stubborn. Totoki is going to change course now. You know, so we're gonna have to deal with this for a while, but what can we do over the long term while we're dealing with this heartache? And I say that about Totoki because his arrogance, and when he first came out there and started speaking to this, and, you know, not realizing that his difficulty in communicating in English was going to lead to a lot of things being lost in translation. He didn't care. It was like this. I could tell right then and there that he was going to be a problem. When I was calling him out early then, people were looking at me like I'm crazy. But here's the thing. Here's what we can do. First and foremost, well, here's what not to do. First and foremost, don't do what Xbox gamers did. Yeah, I'm calling you guys out. Because all you guys did is sat here and worried about, well, as Xbox kept giving you less, are they giving me enough on Twitter for me to argue with the ponies? That's all you cared about. The ponies right now don't even care about y'all. They've tuned you out, and they are talking about this. So as you're seeing some Xbox people trolling or whatever, talking amongst themselves and and having shows talking about this amongst themselves. The ponies don't even care. You're irrelevant to them, and that's the way they should look at it, because they don't plug their HDMI cord into you and get a great game coming out of your mouth. They could care less. They got to plug it into that PlayStation, and anything that harms the greatness of PlayStation and its longevity, which when you harm the effectiveness and the lucrativeness of the store, you definitely do harm that. They're now laser focused, and they're speaking amongst each other, but more importantly, sending a message to Sony, as we've shown you some examples earlier. Don't do what Xbox gamers did. They were just concerned with Twitter, and as this stuff happened, you had some people cry, oh, I guess I'll just go to PC or whatever, but all they care about is pony. They've capitulated, and now they're using this as a justification for what Xbox did. They don't even think what Xbox is doing is bad. They have brainwashed themselves and become so ingrained in this parasocial relationship they have with Xbox. The things that they said were god awful and Xbox would never do last generation, now they're not so bad. And now they feel like there's a justification to it. There is no justification to anybody doing this. Satya has ruined Xbox. Phil Spencer's incompetence has a large part to play in it, but Satya has ruined Xbox. Totoki is ruining PlayStation, and Herman Hulst's incompetence has a lot to do with it. We've seen it in things like Concord, right? But do not capitulate and say, well, you know, there's no need for for PlayStation to backtrack from this because they don't have any competition. You're basically saying because they're alone in the market, they can start giving me crap as a consumer. I was about to swear. It's okay for them to give me crap as a consumer because they won. You're not an investor. What are you talking about? That absolutely makes no sense. It's repulsive to hear gamers even think like that. So don't do what they're doing, okay? Secondly, we can push back. We can send a message to Totoki even with his stubbornness. You got to be willing to speak with your wallet. Nobody should say, and I understand the justification for looking at it this way, but nobody should just say, hey, you know, people aren't going to trade in their PlayStation 5s. I get to where that may not be the case off the bat, but hey, leave no threat off the table. Like, I remember when I said, oh, your games are going to go to $80. I'm not going to like it. And they're going to go to $80. And guess what happened? Outer Worlds 2 tried to pull that crap, and they had to pull back. And now you got Battlefield wanting to do that, and they're going to F around and find out too. Now, again, game prices going up $10 and this complete eradication of the PlayStation brand are on two totally different scales. And it's going to be harder to pivot back from this for Sony, but your voice speaks volumes. Speak up and be willing to speak. Don't say, well, I won't get a PlayStation. Don't just say. Shout out to I keep forgetting his name, M, for saying that. PlayStation not getting a PlayStation 6, okay, but they're in the PlayStation 5 era right now. People need to start saying, hey, I might just sell what I got and upgrade my PC and wait for these games to come. This might be my last year with PlayStation. Y'all need to at least put that out on the table and mean that, and speak with your wallets. Like, when these games come out and there's pre-orders, don't do the pre-orders. We already see how effective that is. Don't do the pre-orders. Even if you plan on keeping your PlayStation, scale back somehow. Get rid of PlayStation Plus. Do something. Don't, even if you're going to get the game, don't pre-order it. Don't upgrade. Like, you got to speak up somehow, okay? And I'm going to close out with this because this is going to be another video which I'm going to leave with the members first. We need someone new in this. We need someone new in this battle. We need someone to battle PlayStation. We need a new we need competition in this space. And gaming is so difficult. Gaming is so difficult to get into financially because there's a lot of money to lose, but there's a lot of money to gain. The winning formula has been put out there by PlayStation. Let me show you guys something real quick before I go any further. This is Hiroki. Here, let me make this bigger. This is Hiroki Shuhei Yoshida. I'm sorry, Shuhei, for defiling you, calling you Hiroki Totoki. This is Shuhei Yoshida. In 2014, he gave you the secret to PlayStation success. Sony Company Entertainment has been known to publish quite a few games that haven't exactly been financial breakthroughs. They were saying this in 2014. Yet they don't seem to be about to give up on that kind of experience. Well, now they are. As explained by Worldwide Studios president Shuhei Yoshida during his panel at Game Lab in Barcelona a few days ago. When you look at what we do, managing studios and managing funds, that's essentially what we do, to look for talent and support talent, because at the end of the day, it's people that create amazing things in this creative team that make breakthroughs. Now, that's the part where I'm telling you that, what I told you earlier, critical to this working is you got to have people that have an eye for talent. There are no people that have an eye for talent at Xbox. They recognize that. That's why they have no choice but to go down this path. PlayStation does have people that have an eye for talent. I can't say Herman Hulst doesn't have an eye for talent because he created the Horizon series, but he's on very shaky ground for, green lighting and continuing on with Concord the way that it was. But they still have people that have an eye for talent there, and they have Naughty Dog and they have great studios. They're Santa Monica. I mean, they're not in. This isn't dire for them. They can still put the ship back on the right path. Here's where they talk. Here's where they give you the secret recipe. It's a hit-driven business. We look at our financial results of the titles, and probably 3 or 4 out of 10 make money, and maybe 1 or 2 make all the money that cover the cost of the other titles. So we have to be able to maintain that hit ratio at a certain level to be able to continue in this business. So we always try to find out and support to help and grow the talent. Again, they told you that's where we get to 60% failure rate. 4% make money. 2 out of that 4, of course, make enough money to fund everything. But because they have an eye for talent, they're willing to, they know, they can afford to have up to 60% of their games fail. But because they want to come out with the biggest and best innovative and eye-popping and jarring game, they're willing to take that risk as long as they don't go over that 60% failure rate, which is a high enough failure rate with it is. And when you look at the recent PlayStation games that have released, including Concord, even some of the duds that they've had, including Concord, they are well within that 60% failure. They're well lower than that, but their threshold is we can't really go over a 60% failure rate. All we need is 4 out of the 10 to sell, because we know if we got 4 that are good, 2 out of those 4 are going to be superb. So that's why when people were saying, oh, every PlayStation, or these PlayStation games only sold 5 million, that's what, they didn't need every PlayStation game to sell 10, 15, 20 million, because the catalog in totality, the interesting, breathtaking looking catalog was the lore. And 2 of those games made so much noise that they spoke for the other 8. That's what is behind the success of PlayStation. They gave you the secret. The blueprint's out there. You just got to have the talent and the money, not just the money like Microsoft, the talent and the money and the leadership that is willing to coincide with that to follow that blueprint. And there's somebody out there, it's paining me to say this, there's somebody out there that can foot that bill But before I officially say their name, I gotta have a conversation with this person. So another video is coming out. I'm gonna drop it with our members first. If you want to hear who this entity is, you know, that can do this, come join us and become a member. That video is actually live now. Hear me out, and we're gonna talk about this even further before I release this to the public. All right. So with that said, I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this video. It's very, you know, it's very grim days at PlayStation, but it's not over. Like I said, they have talent there. They're just being steered by a crazy drunken captain, and someone just needs to push them to the side and take over the wheel. All right. So with that said, that's it from your boy. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, rock those bells for notifications, please. And make sure the notifications say all. Till next time, have a wonderful gaming day. Peace.